Barry Levinson is in that small class of American writer-directors who make films from their own experience. Diner, 10 Men, and Avalon were all set in Baltimore, the director's hometown. Now comes Jimmy Hollywood, starring Joe Pesci and Christian Slater. It is the fourth movie written and directed by Levinson, and the first set in Los Angeles, his home of the last 25 years. Barry Levinson has also directed movies written by other people, including Good Morning Vietnam, Bugsy, and Rain Man, for which he won an Oscar, and I am pleased to have him here. And I take note of the fact that I think you are moving from Los Angeles to Northern California. Is that right?
That's right. That's right.
Why? Because this has something to do with Jimmy Hollywood, I think.
In a sense. I mean, we've got a couple, little kids, 5 and 8, and school age, and trying to find a situation where they can go to a public school and where they can go off and, play in the neighborhood, like, you eat, run out and play. And,
like it used to be in Baltimore?
Yeah, the way it used to be. So you try to find a situation where you could feel comfortable in that way. And, things may ultimately change and get better in terms of Los Angeles, but, in a very short time of kids being in school, 12 years, and all of a sudden, they're adults, you try to find something that perhaps would work best for them.
I saw your movie this morning, Jimmy Hollywood, and it had a screening early this morning. It opens when?
March 30th.
Okay. Tell me what the story is. I mean, I know it and I could tell it, but I'd rather have you tell me. What's the origin of the story, the idea that drove you to make this film, and what did you want to say, and what was your agenda? Because you talk about frequently that your films have an agenda.
Well, I mean, I think it's a culmination of certain things that get into your subconscious. It really goes back to Bugsy. Bugsy, it takes place in the 40s, Hollywood at the 40s, the glamour
age. A New York gangster moved to Los Angeles, in love with Hollywood.
Loves it. And so we go out to location scout and we're looking for a Hollywood, and there's no Hollywood. There is no Hollywood as we think about it. There was no Hollywood Brown Derby, and Sunset and Vine had a mini mall, and it was totally different. And wherever we went, we couldn't find it. So we had to ultimately do, matte paintings and make it look, terrific in terms, for that film. It stayed in my head ultimately. If you look at Hollywood Boulevard now and you see the real deterioration, and it's really, it saddens me in a sense because I have a great affection for, for the place.
The romance of the movies.
Yes,
and
the mythology of it.
Yeah.
And it's not that way. And then you see these kind of strange souls wandering around, and you see like these people with this desperate need, to make it in a way that have come from various places with dreams, and they're really not going anywhere at all. These are the really kind of the ones way out on the fringe. There are a lot of actors struggling to make it, but they've had a background in it. But there's this fringe element to just assume they can make it. There's a guy riding around in L.A. with a big car, and he's plastered all over it. He's got his picture, "Hire me, I'm an actor." There was at the Academy Awards, someone told me, a plane flying overhead with a banner, "I've got a great script, call me." So there's these fringe kind of players are out there.
They believe that they'll capture.
Yes, they're going to get it.
That lightning will strike them. Yeah. That it will happen.
They'll play the lottery and win.
And so you take that idea, that Hollywood is not the world that it used to be, the mythology, something has happened to that Hollywood, and you found it out when you were looking for places to shoot Bugsy. There's also this notion of one of those characters who comes to Los Angeles from New Jersey looking for.
Right.
Actually, he didn't come out there looking for.
Well, he just assumed he was going to make it as an actor.
And he wasn't, and he hasn't.
And he hasn't, and 7 years have gone by when this begins.
And one day, something changes.
What happens is he believes in the Hollywood mythology. He's faced with the reality of Hollywood, which is a dangerous area. There's a lot of crime in the area. He struggles with that. Someone steals his car radio. He's frustrated by it. The police are obviously not going to solve the crime. They got bigger things on their hands. He ultimately says, look, it's not that hard to get these people off the street. And he and his friend William, they sit in lounge chairs outside through the nights, waiting for someone to break into a car and steal the radio. He wants some kind of satisfaction.
And they videotape it.
And they videotape him, and they take it to the police. They drop him off when they, with the tape and a video saying, look, this guy did this. It's not very hard to get them off the street. And the note that is signed that says SOS is interpreted by the media as a vigilante organization. Yeah. And because he sees himself as an actor, wanting desperately to be an actor, he said, well, if there's a vigilante group, who would the head of that vigilante group be? And suddenly he's invented the character Jericho. Yeah. And suddenly he's off to the races.
And he believes that he is playing the role of his life, that this is a chance for him to act in a way that demonstrates, in his mind, the talent that he has.
Yes.
All right, roll tape. Jimmy Hollywood starring Joe Pesci. Here it is. Let me just talk a minute about casting, because your three principal actors are right there. Why did you choose each of them?
Pesci, I think, has a great sense of humor. Great in terms of, I think, dramatic aspects, unpredictable nature, can take things to the edge. Very much what I want from Jimmy Alto. You know, one moment you can laugh, the next minute you get afraid for him or what he's liable to do to someone else. You know, very unpredictable. I think you need that. The character is just, you know, as a live wire.
A little manic, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that Slater, I met him once, and I thought he had to kind of, he could have this certain simplicity that I wanted, and that ultimately there'd be sort of a kind of a mystery to William, because William we only find a little bit about in pieces throughout as to what must have gone on, why he came out there, you know, what was happening in his life, you know. But I thought there was a simplicity. I thought that would work quite well.
And the woman? And
Victoria, I was looking for a Spanish woman because, I mean, Hollywood is enormous Spanish-speaking, you know, community. And I've not seen that portrayed that way, and I wanted to have that element in the film. And someone had mentioned her, and we ultimately got a chance to meet. And
you flew to Spain to meet?
I had to fly over there because I talked to her on the telephone. I couldn't understand maybe 20% of the conversation, you know, on the phone.
But you get there and she's better, and
she was was great in person and very, very intelligent and understood the script.
Yeah, you wrote this yourself, and you wrote it. How long did you? The idea comes what, in February?
And something like that.
Yeah,
I think.
And you said, how do you write? I mean, do you stand up? Do you sit down? You send out a script, or you do talk it out?
I talk it out. You know, I kind of get it in my head, sort of what I'm going to do, and then I talk it. And, you know, I know structurally how it's going to go. I know that I'm going to end up over here. Yeah. And then I sort of talk it, and in some ways I feel like these characters are just speaking to one another.
That's what you have. So those who know better say that the thing that you have is an ear for dialogue, that they see that in all the movies you have done.
Well, I try to create dialogue that sounds like people are making it up. You know, I mean, I remember the first time on Diner when the people write those cards, you know, and so what do you think of the screenplay? And someone said, what screenplay? Sounds like everybody made it up.
Yeah. They were ad-libbing as they go almost.
Yeah, but that I think is, I mean, we're always struggling. We're trying to find what to say, and we say some things, we repeat ourselves, we make a point too many times or not enough. All of those elements I like to be able to incorporate into the work that I do, and so that it feels like it's extremely unpredictable. And it's just the way that I've always worked.
You did this in February, and then you started shooting when? By the summer?
We started shooting in the summertime. We shot in a 43-day schedule.
And you shot it, 16 millimeter or 35? Did you shoot
35.
35, but natural light. You shot a lot of, I mean, it was different than what you've done before, not as many set pieces.
It's not as a refined a piece of work, because I don't think it needs it. I think that it doesn't need, say, the patina of, say, a Bugsy.
Yeah.
It is a rougher-looking kind of a movie. It's a little edgier type of movie. We had a
kind
small
of
kind of...
the word crudity, I think I saw somewhere.
Yeah, it's that kind of style which I think supports the movie.
Did you find that sort of liberating for yourself?
Loved it.
Why?
Loved it. Well, because I think when you can work fast like that, there's a great deal of energy. You're loose. It's very tough. The toughest thing that you have in terms of making movies is the downtime, the hours of lighting for a scene, trying to keep all of the energy and trying to keep the focus. And that happens to be the way it works in a lot of movies. But this one, it didn't. We could work in a much quicker way because of the style. And it's fun. You're just moving. You're just constantly doing it. You're shooting like that, you move the camera over here, 5 minutes later, you're ready to go.
Are you pretty much married to the script you have, or do you allow much improvisation since you're both the director and the writer, screenwriter?
I basically will challenge the script any time that I can. Any time that some actor wants to try.
Whether you wrote it or somebody else wrote it?
Doesn't matter. You always sort of see if there's something better. If it is, fine, you put it into it. If not, you've wasted a little film.
How much did it cost? 15 million, 20 million?
Well, it's a $6.5 million below the line is where the movie was set up, which is the actual production cost of making it on a 43-day shoot. And so that's the way that we actually designed it. It's sort of a hybrid, independent, at a studio.
So you pay part of it, and the studio pays part of it? What was it?
Well, I mean, if it went over that figure, then I would ultimately be out of pocket on it. But so the Rosette below the line is fairly inexpensive.
Is in any way this a comeback film for you? Do you have something on the line with this film?
Well, I think you always have something on the line. I mean, every time you have to come out with some movie, you're ultimately seeing if you can how you can do with the the public, and whether you can turn a profit for the company.
But you know what they're looking at. I mean, they're saying toys, and here comes Jimmy Hollywood. And is Barry? Does he have to show us something now that toys was an aberration for him?
In the final analysis, I don't think you can think of it that way, because I think you would paralyze yourself in terms of trying to find, the work that suddenly is going to be, this is going to be a big movie if I do this or whatever. I think you got to make the choices in terms of what motivates you, and you have to live and die by that.
Yeah. Would you prefer to work from your own script, or does it matter, or is it different?
I think it's a totally different way of working. I mean, look, there are people who always write and direct. I've jumped back and forth because I'm attracted to material that I would not sit down and write. But I would like to make it. And so I jump in and out of
Rain Man, Bugsy, Good Morning Vietnam?
Right.
That's stuff you wouldn't have written.
No. I mean, a lot of Rain Man is stuff that I can ultimately, work on while we're shooting it, and there's a lot of sequences that I can basically put my hands in that way. But I wouldn't have basically have worked on a Rain Man. That wouldn't have been an idea that I would have developed. And Jimmy Toback, who wrote Bugsy, is his sensibility to that, and I can be able to do that screenplay really excited me. But I would not have sat down to write about that.
But do all of them have one common denominator, whether you wrote it or not, which is heavy? The notion of you is heavy on character development and less heavy on storyline.
I'm driven by
relationships drive you.
Yes. Yes, I'm fascinated by character behavior, and that's why you see in the movies where there's comedy and drama, and sometimes within milliseconds, because it's behavior, it's the way we behave, as opposed to here's the comedy segment, now here's the dramatic segment. Our behavior is what makes it all go. Bugsy is a character-driven piece, although it is a very strong narrative, but it is ultimately Bugsy, the character that gets us into it and takes us on the journey. Same thing applies to Jimmy Hollywood, and for that matter, if you would use, Rain Man as an example, it's the journey of those two characters, just the simplicity of those two characters and Charlie trying to deal with them.
You came in after a while on Rain Man, did you not? I mean, there have been other directors on that.
Yes.
What was it you did that made it work? Would it somehow simplify the relationship between the two characters,
or
something like that?
Basically to throw out the adventure. It had much more of an adventure. It was much more of an adventure, and they had all these obstacles along the way, which is really to kind of throw it out and say, look,
this is about
brothers. About brothers. Let's deal with the brothers. Let's just leave it at that and work on it.
I want to get to Homicide in a minute, but let me take another look. Here's another clip. This is where he says, "Enjoy the fame." Set up the scene.
This is the one in the apartment, I guess, when he's talking with Lorraine.
I assume that's what it is.
Well, then this is after he's obviously been caught up in terms of his whole vigilante thing. He's taken with himself as a figure, and the argument
Someone
is
who's
about
playing a character as well as doing good.
Yeah, and I think he's trying to explain his position.
Yeah, because she's about had it with all this.
Yeah, she's.
All right, roll tape. Here it is. Yeah. Let me go to Homicide in television. Set in Baltimore. Yeah. Tell me why you decided to do that, and what it is about that television series that brought you to television.
I was fascinated by the book that David Simon wrote.
Writing for the Baltimore Sun, as I remember.
Yes.
A series of...
He wrote a number of articles, but then he basically followed the Homicide Squad for 1 year every day. And he documented the work that they did. It's a terrific book, and so I got a hold of it as a possible movie idea, but I thought it was better as a television series because you can just sort of play out the story on a week-to-week basis and kind of really get into the world of homicide detectives.
Not much violence, not many car chases, not a whole lot of
not much
things that are normally seen in cop movies.
Not a lot of action. Basically, again, character, behavior, how do they interact with one another, how do they do their job. It's not about crime solving, although some weeks we ultimately do that. But it's really the characters. That becomes the journey.
And you got Robin Williams to do a cameo for him?
Robin did, which was really,
more than a cameo.
Great on his behalf is he really liked the show and believed in it. And we had this episode and said, would you be interested? And he said, yeah, I'd love to. And went into Baltimore and shot for a week. And he was very, very helpful. He's a terrific person.
There are still people who look at you and say, Diner is my favorite film. They look at the body of your work, no matter how good it is. Do you understand that? What it was about Dinah that somehow struck a chord?
It's, well, I think it's hard to say.
Young men talking about why they can't make it with women.
Yes. I mean, I hear, what happens is I have different audiences. I mean, because there are those that love the Baltimore pieces, and there are those who like the other kind of, films that I have done. Diner, in a sense, I think stays with people for probably the very reason that it almost never got released, because it was just so much about just people hanging around that the studio originally was so upset and said, well, what is it? They're just talking. There's nothing going on. Let's get on with the story.
Where's the plot?
Yeah.
Yeah. Your favorite? Tell me about your love for The Magnificent Ambersons.
Oh, I think it's terrific.
Your favorite film?
I don't know if it's my favorite film. I think there are parts of it that are as good as it gets. There are scenes in that I think are just extraordinary. I mean, I would love to have seen the film as Wells originally did it. I know you hear all the stories that the audience laughed at it and et cetera, and who knows. But there is work in it that's extraordinary. I mean, it is such a tragedy, because you would love to have seen if, like, you'd say, look, here's a little money, Orson, just go make some movies and come back every couple years with whatever you have, and we'll just, we'll have that ultimately, to see what he might have been capable of.
But here's it's an intriguing question about him, and it never happened. Why did it never happen? I mean, there were a lot of people out there with money they could have given to Orson Welles, and everybody recognized that he, obviously by his work, was a huge talent.
Amazing.
Why didn't it happen?
Well, I mean, I think that probably by nature he has a certain self-destructive streak, and at the same time, probably a character who was obviously bigger than life and intimidated a lot of people, and his reputation became such that, he would be difficult or whatever, and he may have been.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of talent comes along once in a blue moon, in a way. And so whatever it was, and however difficult he may have been, you'd still say, look, here, take this little money over here, let's see what happens.
But we don't also know whether, in fact, he would. I mean, we really don't know if he'd ever made a if he'd had the money to go do the film. He spent a lot of time trying to raise the money, I understand, and for different reasons.
Right.
But you don't really know whether he ever had the discipline, certainly in the latter part of his life, to ever go make the movie.
I guess we'll never know. I mean, he did on very little money, do like Chimes at Midnight, that has some of the most extraordinary sequences I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. Who's influenced you? Who's made a difference in the way you look at the craft of directing?
I don't know who's influenced me, because I'm not a great student of film, and that I can look and say, the shot that so-and-so did. And I'm not very good at it. I kind of look at movies and I watch them and I can enjoy them or turn them off. I can look at the work of John Ford and think that he just did some amazing things in terms of his storyteller. He was incredible.
Great story. There's a great story about John. And you go ahead.
And so he was a master, an astounding filmmaker. On the other hand, Elia Kazan did some of the most amazing work I've ever seen. I mean, On the Waterfront to me has got some of the most astounding work I've ever seen in my life as a truly great movie. So Kazan fascinates me on one hand, all different kinds. I think Godard doing Breathless. You look at that movie and it was done in 1960, and you say, look what he was doing. Yeah. Look at the work that he was capable of. Disclosure.
That's your next project, Michael Crichton's book. Have you already cast it?
Well, not all of it. I mean, Michael Douglas and Demi Moore are going to be in it, and I think Donald Sutherland is going to be in it. So that's.
What do you want to do? What's the story you want to tell? What's it about for you?
Well, I think we want to do basically the
book that's been written. But how do you see what's been written?
Well, what I'm fascinated by is the male-female relationships and trying to come to terms with defining men and women in the workplace now.
And how it's changed.
How has it changed?
And
what do we do?
As Michael says, it's really about power more than anything else.
How do we behave with one another? What can you do? What can't you do? What is correct? What is incorrect? All of that, I think, is really kind of very rich to work out.
And how did you get this opportunity? Was this because somebody at CAA said, we've got Crichton as a client and Levinson's a client, let's put them together? Or did Michael say, I want Levinson to make my film because I wrote the book and I know it's a great property for a filmmaker?
Well, I'm not sure in a sense, because initially Milos Forman was involved in it, and then whatever else went on there didn't quite work out.
Well, Michael's been here and talked about that. Basically, just had a different view of what the film ought to be.
Yeah, and And I had a conversation with him earlier on, and I kind of, told him about the things that I liked and the areas where I thought, could be, problematic. And kind of, we discussed it, and somehow it kind of came back again.
You can still do with that what you want to do, which is to do character studies and about relationships and...
In that, because I think it ultimately supports the book. I don't want to make a movie that isn't what the book is, because I think it's a disservice to any book.
You don't want to do Bonfire of the Vanities.
No. I think you want to try to say, look, here's the great strengths of it, let's utilize that. And within it, I think to have these very strong, male-female relationships and show the things.
One question before I go. What did it look like for the Orioles this season?
Going to win the pennant.
Are they really? Made some good trades over the...
I think so.
Yeah.
That's my hope.
Yeah. Camden Yard's a great place to watch a ball game.
It's incredible. It's so terrific to see a new stadium that is that comfortable and that close to the action, and that it's terrific.
So you're one of the owners of the Orioles.
I just have pride in that team.
Great to see. Barry Levinson from Baltimore, the pride of Baltimore. Jimmy Hollywood's a film. The next film is Disclosure. It's always great to have someone here who loves his work. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow night. Among others, Richard Harris and a discussion of breast cancer and the great conductor of the New York Philharmonic. See you then.